Section 18 in the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This meeting of the Medfield Warrant Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided in the order. As a reminder, persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so by following the instructions on the agenda and the meeting notice. And we are all being recorded for everyone's future viewing pleasure. So hi. So I think we have a few things to cover today. So I figure we'll start with minutes, and then we'll probably do the Christine and Nick show for a little bit. And then I think Newton has DPW budgets, and Jeremy has some stuff on the warrant articles that he was working on. Does that sound good?
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Hey. All right. So did everybody have a chance to look at Newton's minutes that he sent around? Does anyone have
Yep.
any comments or questions?
Nope.
Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I
Motion
move
to
that
approve.
the January 12th, 2021 minutes of the warrant committee be approved as written.
All right.
Second.
Okay. All right. So Bob.
Aye.
Ed.
Aye.
Newton.
Yes.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Christine.
So since I wasn't at that meeting, I shouldn't vote, right?
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. One abstaining. Amanda.
Yes.
And I vote yes also. Okay.
So
those are-
Christine, that's one correction. I need to put you in as absent, not in attendance of those meeting, of that meeting. Okay, thank
there
you.
you go. All right. Christine and Nick. Joe.
So we have a couple of updates for you. As we told you last Monday, we would start to get information in, especially after the Mass Municipal Conference last week. So I don't know if you've had a chance to look, but we have been able to reduce our health insurance number slightly. We had been carrying an 8% increase, and we've dropped it to a 6.8. We anticipated that it will go lower than that. We're hoping to see somewhere in the 5% range, but I think we're still being conservative on that. I, again, want to caution us that even if we have a 5% increase from Maya for our insurance, we do need to carry a little extra. We are concerned about the number of people who are joining our health insurance plan this year. And obviously, as we talked about previously, having one family join the HMO family plan is a $17,000 increase to the town. So it quickly adds up having, just 3 or 4 people come onto the plan in a year. The other increase is we actually have this is actually a final budget number on county retirement. We had been carrying that with a 9.5% increase, and we were able to bring it in at 4.47. So we have a good number on that now.
Well, it's a big pickup.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, that was a big pickup.
Yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
And we don't expect that. I know Nick's been following the trend on that, and we really were anticipating a 9.5% over what we've been tracking for the last 5 years. So I think that may be a one-time big savings we see in there, but we'll keep an eye on that.
Was that, so is that from the retirement system? That's an interesting drop.
From Norfolk County.
Yeah.
The
Is
other
that something that might be related to market performance, or do you know what that is?
Let's see. Georgia is telling me, yes, you are correct, Bob. Also because we didn't have a payroll increase.
Okay, that's it.
Yep. Oh, just to update you also, the Lieutenant Governor and the Governor spoke at the conference. We are anticipating our initial cherry sheets late on Wednesday. They're anticipating unrestricted government aid with an increase of 3.5%. And then we will also find out Chapter 70 for schools and how the federal stimulus money will come to the schools. I was joking, but I am a little serious on this. They announced that they will be holding a session for people to understand how they are distributing these stimulus and Chapter 70 money. So that did not raise my level of confidence that this is going to be an easy process. So we'll see. I'll save my judgment for that later. The other thing I wanted to talk about before, I have a few budgets to talk about just to kind of give you a heads up on them, but I've heard from a few of you, and I think, I don't know if we need to change our process or if I need to change my process, but I know last year when we decided we needed cuts, I took the first pass at them and brought them to the warrant committee. And I'm not sure, I know some of you have asked for cuts from the departments, and I don't know if you want to continue in that process or if you just want to, if we want to look at what the big picture is, because cutting $200 from, this budget, 400 from the other, is not going to get us to 2.1 million. So I think we really need to look at what our bigger picture is of how we're going to get that budget number down. So I don't know, I don't want to give you stress having, the department heads push back on you about this. I'm not surprised they're pushing back. I mean, the town overall took a 4% budget increase. They've come in for the most part. I think we're at 0.6 budget increase other than the Board of Health, which raised it. They're pushing back because they're mad about being asked again for cuts. They're mad about not getting salary increases last year when they've seen other unions get salary increases. So even though they were warned they should have budget cuts presented and prepared for you, I think that's why you're seeing some pushback. So I'm fine putting together those cost cuts for you if you'd rather do it that way. It's up to you.
I had a meeting with the chief, and I framed it in the question of what would happen if you were to make cuts.
Mm-hmm.
But I would not, from my perspective, it's not my role to suggest a cut.
Okay.
It's just to go through and understand the numbers. And as I said, I said, and I hope I expressed it properly with him, but I said, I just have to ask the question just so I know what the risks are that you're working with in terms of that. And I said, it was an arbitrary number. I said, if you had to cut 2.5% or, off of your budget, what would that mean to you? And, and he was very, as he always is, he's very upfront and transparent and said, oh, it's a service and it's a service effect. I'm at a point where it's not paper clips and gasoline. It's people and service and support. And that was from my perspective, and I would expect, just have the similar kind of conversation with Chief Cadet when I meet with her on Wednesday. Again, to frame it in the sense of, just so I can understand, because the presentations and their numbers of, in these particular cases, I think in all the cases I've been involved in, is very reflective. I know from our prior warrant committee meetings that, you have you responded, yeah, we've told them this is what it is, but it's all in play. But I said, it's not my role to suggest a cut, but I'm just trying to understand what's the world you live in. I don't know.
Glad you raised this, Christine, because I've probably taken a little different spin than Bob. It's not where I've made the suggestion of cuts. It's that, I've kind of laid the foundation to say, if you had to cut, where could you do this? Can you help give me some understanding of the turnbacks so we get a bigger picture? And then where could you see yourself cutting to have the least impact? And I had a call like today with Council on Aging saying, can you start to think about if we had to come back to you like we did in prior years and say, we've got to figure out how to tighten the belt across the board, right? Because we do anticipate that. So, Bob, I have like you, I haven't said this is where you should cut, but I've had some of these conversations to say, well, have you thought about maybe that's the kind of expense that could go in another way? Because as I'm digging in, I'm really trying to understand, okay, what are the pain points, especially as you factor that in with revolving accounts and where the rest of the town is, because we're going up in the tax rate every year. So I have probably made, shared some of my thoughts, have you considered maybe we address this part of the budget this way, or what's the difference between this line item and that line item, and can they be consolidated, or are you working across departments? So I've probably been a bit more scapular in how I've had the conversations.
And I agree, because I had a conversation with Sarah Posa for planning and zoning, and she had combined her budgets last year. And, I just asked her the question, like, on some of our line items, some of the budget lines were zero, but then each year, we allocated a certain amount, but then there was no expenditures from that. So I just asked her, is there any way that we could, what do you foresee in like training and professional work next year? And is there any way that we can like cut anything, or like kind of at least come to a compromise? Because I understand that that she's working from a slim budget already. And that, is there any way that we can compromise it, like give a little bit? But I know you're working, and so she was like, no, I don't want to cut my budget. And she's like, I'm working from a really slim budget. And I think she felt like a lot of stress, because she's like, I'm working so much, I'm on all these other committees that is like above and beyond like what my pay is. And she was actually almost getting like upset that, like, I think she's just spread too thin, is basically the message that I got. And she's like, if you take it away from me, then it's fine. Like, I'll agree to it, of course, but I don't want to cut anymore. She's level funded. There was like a slight increase for like the, her pay step up and then longevity. But other than that, it was pretty much level funded. So, I asked her about turnbacks, and, she didn't have the numbers, but, she definitely pushed back and said she didn't want to give any more. So that was one of the questions that I wanted to raise, is if they're level funded, should we keep trying to press them? Like, should we press them to try to cut, or like, how should we approach it? Because she was getting upset, and I didn't want to like get her upset. And then she was like, well, if I'm cutting, like, I want everyone to be able to cut. I don't want just my budget to be cut.
So
like,
I think
it should be like fair across every department.
And I don't think it's fair for you to have been in that position. And obviously I've been briefed on what happened. I think that's my role. If we identify the amount of money you would like to see cut, my advice to them was to come in level funded. After a 4% decrease last year, my advice to them was to come in level funded. So I know there's some confusion on their part as to why they would be asked for a different budget. Now, obviously, whatever budget I'm recommending, the warrant committee can have a different budget and say, no, we'd like to see, another 2% cut from the town. I would like to give you those cuts, I think, is really what I'm getting at. I think it makes the most sense for me, once you identify what you'd like to have cut, that I will go back and look at all of the town budgets to make sure we're cutting where we feel is appropriate and, on our side.
I see. So like, if I say like, maybe you could cut a little bit on training and, training, because in the past 4 years, nothing was expended and they're not anticipating anything. So like, make that recommendation to you, Christine, and then you would then go back and talk to like the respective department heads on that.
Yeah, I mean, we're also developing lists of cuts on our side now as well that may coordinate with that. We may not see the cuts in the same line items that you do, but we can talk about that.
But I guess I would question the, it does get into the role of the warrant committee. And I think that, and again, Christine, I 100% agree with what you're saying, is it's your responsibility to put together the budget. But these conversations, and again, I think the coaching is good. People talking about, because the different personalities will react in different ways. I know some of the people involved, and I know how they respond to any question. Never mind the suggestion of a reduction, but in dealing with the chief, I think he seemed to be fine. I think he understood my perspective. Maybe he probably didn't appreciate it, but what I'm also trying to do is, I understand going back to you and talking about the changes, but I in some ways I'm trying to anticipate questions that might come from the town meeting, and, like this afternoon, I had a brief, when I picked up my binder, I saw you and I just had a quick inquiry as to what the response was on a certain item, only to anticipate, and not necessarily to support the cut. It might be to support the budget, generally speaking, but I want to come at the end. My job at the end is to be able to support the budget that's presented to the town meeting. That's we go around and we did, and that was what we came up with last year through a lot of hard work and some pain with the school committee, the board of selectmen, and the warrant committee. And I thought that was a great example of what we're trying to achieve. So when we go to the town meeting, it's not a free for all. It's a unified voice. Here's the number, and gone through it. But I think that does require some, candid discussions in these, in these one-on-ones in preparation coming to the warrant committee. Even in some respects, to anticipate what each of you or each of us will be asking when they present it to the warrant committee. So I don't want to, it's only fair that, because you say, wait a minute, this thing, I know from experience that 6 out of 7 people in the warrant committee are going to look at this number and ask about it. So let me ask you about it and give you a little heads up, So, I mean, it's a tricky process, but, you own it in terms of the number you bring as from the town. You've been working with Nick and the team and all, and bringing it forward. And I guess from my perspective, we're the, we do the oversight and try to anticipate what reflects the town's questions, both to, as I said, to help them when they come, so they're not blindsided by, where a question might come from.
And I just to add to that, I do think there's, and I will say there have been some department heads that are like, Amanda, we're not going to spend anything we don't need. We'll do the turnbacks, really want to partner, understand the position of the town, right? And I really applaud, that thinking and that positioning. But when we do have these discussions, I am feeling a little bit like we need to give them some assurance that this department alone isn't taking the hit as opposed to others, because I do see a recurring theme of like wanting to know that everybody's in the same boat with the pain points, right?
Mhm.
So in these discussions, I've tried to assure, like, even if we had to look at a cut, the goal is not to penalize them because they didn't do trainings the year before, right? Or the numbers might look a little different because of COVID. So it's good to hear this dialogue to understand how to approach some of these discussions, because I personally have been digging in a bit more, just knowing, kind of where we are and what we think we have to make up.
Okay.
Okay.
So I just want to point out a couple of budgets. I had an opportunity to meet with Sharon. So just to give you a heads up, there are 4 budgets that have the potential to change. These are budgets under my control. The town administrator's budget may change. I'm currently in contract negotiations with the Board of Selectmen over my contract. The Board of Health, that is where you're seeing the majority of our increase, and that is on the request for the full-time public health nurse at $75,000. So just want to keep that on your radar, especially because the Board of Health keeps asking me to make sure that I put it on your radar. So duly noted.
I'm reminded every evening.
I think it's reasonable.
I'm sure you are, Newton.
You might have an insight into that. Mrs. Thompson is actually functioning as our public health nurse.
Christine, you said you were meeting with, with our chairperson today. Is that the basis of what you were saying, that you got so much pushback from the chairperson?
It's what she gets for
Sharon made
me
me
having the town services ones.
To give you a heads up, we have a retirement coming in the Conservation Commission. That position, for as long as I can remember, has functioned as a part-time position. So we're investigating exactly how to replace that. Leslie's been here, I think, close to 30 years. So we're relooking at that position, working with the Conservation Commission, but that may change based on what we get when we go out to solicit for resumes. And then we are going to consolidate the streetlights budget into the facilities budget. So we'll actually have a reduction of one budget on that side. I think those are the only things I wanted to give you a heads up on.
What's the rationale on the consolidation of the streetlights in the facilities?
It functions, right now we've put all of the energy budgets into facilities, and that was one of the ones that we hadn't moved in there. And Amy's actually managing that, so it just seems to make sense to move that into her budget altogether.
And I have a question. The sealer, is that part of the administration? The sealer?
So, it's funny you say that. I was looking at that today. It's a $2,000 budget. I think we can absorb that into, I was thinking through the building department is probably where I would put that under inspectional services, so. And the only other thing I wanted to review, and I don't know if you want to wait till the end, is we already have an update on the draft warrant articles that I gave you last week. So, and we actually have one that just got added today. So.
Well, why don't we do Newton's DPW budgets, and then we could do the warrant articles, and since Jeremy's is warrant articles too. Can we do that?
That sounds fine.
Okay.
I circulated my analysis to everyone, but dare I try to share my screen and put it up? Yes, no?
Absolutely.
Go
That'd
for
be
it.
great. Yeah.
How do I do that?
Just
The alternative, I always copy Nick, and Nick, if you can share.
Just don't expect everybody to be able
Needs
to
an
do this.
assist.
You know?
I have
Don't
my
set the bar
iPad
too
sitting
high.
here so I can call yours up, Newton.
Pull it up for you. Give me 1 second.
That's magic.
Oh, I do see share screen at the bottom, but that's right. That looks good. Thank you. It's kind of tiny, but
It's getting bigger. That's good.
okay. So last year, Joanna Hilvert did a wonderful job breaking down each of the departments, looking at them separately, salary and operating expenses. I didn't do that. I complicated matters by condensing everything and trying to look at all salary, all operations across all of the divisions. Things were changing, not drastically, but pretty readily. I visited with Mo Goulet Friday. He was very generous with a couple of hours of his time. I hit him up for probably a half a dozen emails asking different questions on things moving around. And even then, his budget, I think, was updated. And Nick, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it was submitted maybe on Friday and updated today, or along between the two periods. So some things that that I looked at from the initial budget sheets that were level funded turned out to have some increases that he was requesting. So I broke it down, as I said, salary, and at request of Ed Vizella, we put in a couple of adds to the schedule, both the head count as of, I guess this is a current period from current status, and then just for purposes of comparison, the FY 2020 actual results, so that you could see the trend from budgeted amounts or approved amounts for 21 in the request for 22. I will say, and Joanna pointed this out in her material last year, that there were some department movements from, or in some, there may have been some department movements like facilities related costs going out to Amy Colleran's budget, but there were people coming in, I think from the admin side. A couple of admins came into highway in the water and sewer budgets, so those increased salaries, again, 20 to 21. Looking at the requests for FY22, you can see all the explanations over on the right-hand side. They are mostly as a result of grade steps and longevity. I also tried to give you a quick note if there was anything about that headcount that was interesting. Mo and one admin sit in the highway department. The other admin is split between water and sewer. There's an interesting phenomenon other than annual grade steps and longevity. With regard to snow and ice, the budget gets increased by both salary and operating costs by $1. And I did a little research, and I'm sure that Jeremy can talk about this a little bit better than I can. But I think that allows, there's a state regulation that drives that as long as you're equal to or higher than the prior year in your costs, I think you can deficit spend, and that's a question. So I'm getting a nod from Christine and Jeremy on that. And that.
Yes, that's correct. Is that FY20 actual for snow and ice? Is that the actual? Was it only $96,000?
Yes, those are actual numbers. Yep, off of the departmental sheets from Nick.
That seems extremely low.
Yes, we had a very low snow and ice actual last year.
We're off to a good start this year.
Was it snowier in Natick?
Yeah. You sure? 96,000 for everything, all in.
That's salary.
This is just the salary side.
Yeah, okay. Good.
So let me just jump to the next page.
Before you go on that, Jeremy, just a quick question. You explained the highway department, because yeah, that went up from 906 to 973 to 984. And that was my, when I looked at that, I said, how'd that happen? And I think you answered it by saying they had a few people transferred in, and that's why they jumped to 973 and 21.
Yep.
And is that the same also in sewer? Because they went up, almost.
Yes. So water and sewer split an admin. I don't know what, she's making. It's probably in the 60, 70 range. But according to Mo, there was also an ad back in 2021, I guess it was, for that budget, for an ad to sewer also added an additional position per the Mass DEP.
Oh, okay. So
I
that would
remember that,
explain how you got from 221 to 313, because the
Right.
base went up. Okay.
Right. So I don't know what the nature of that is. He communicated that to me back at 5:20 tonight. So we could pursue that a little bit more if we need further detail. And again, I have a lot of rich detail that didn't get because of space put into it, but I could throw.
Just to clarify on the admins, these were not new admins hired. These
Correct.
were admins that were paid out of the town administrator's budget that we transferred into department budgets for transparency purposes.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay. So on the operating side, I put it in yellow just to distinguish this block, but nothing more than that. There were some ins and outs, and there was I guess, for lack of a better phrase, a clawback in the equipment repair budget to the solid waste disposal budget. And that's to cover the costs associated with the household hazardous waste disposal. It was formally put in grounds and building line item that was in the solid waste disposal budget. This gets a little complicated, but that line item got moved to equipment. And essentially, Mo said, I need that amount of money that's in equipment to cover hazardous waste. And so I have a much longer explanation if that doesn't sound kosher to you, but essentially says the 15,000 for hazardous waste was indirectly taken out of equipment repair line that was transferred to another budget last year. And so he clawed it back this year into solid waste. I think a little bit more interesting, although a smaller amount, the 5K increase that I first note in solid waste is an increase due to the costs associated with the single stream recycling. Sorry for my penmanship or spelling, and trucking. So last year we were paying 80, as Mo tells me, we were paying $85 a ton. This year it's up to, he was able to negotiate it no more than $90 a ton, and we're running about 1,000 tons a year. So that accounted for that increase.
This
Is
was
that
an
a
area
year-to-year
where-
contract?
That is a good question. Christine or
No,
Nick?
we just signed the new contract, Nick. Was it a 3-year?
It was just a 1-year extension.
The 1 year?
So this was one was discussed last year because they said, I think it was indicated that this whole scenario of solid waste disposal was changing and not for the better from a cost perspective. Is that on the horizon still? I mean, it looks like it was kind of minimal this year, but
It's on the mend a little bit, Bob, in that the markets have opened up in other countries beyond China. So the market is getting a little better. But so it probably makes sense to have just a year extension, and then in a year from now, things may be different. So
Good, thank you.
it seems like that was a good call.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy. I didn't get into that sort of market analysis with him, so your perspective is appreciated. And then he also increased 8K in the solid waste budget for buildings and grounds. And I asked him, what's all that about? And I thought facilities had taken over, and he said, no, it's mostly the miscellaneous costs for the transfer station, ground improvements, refrigerant disposal, electrical issues that represent. So it's a sort of a miscellaneous category. At the cemetery, they increased 5K this year, sort of a big jump for them, just relatively wise, but for contractor services. And that one piqued my interest. Mo says, well, we've had a spike in contractor services at the cemetery due to an elevated number of deaths from last year and continuing strong through this year. We have to anticipate an increase for these services as our line items already 84% used. So he's running hot and wanted to get ahead of that. Any comments, questions there? Okay. I just put in a note just for your edification that the sidewalk operating budgets for sidewalk materials, I don't have a delineation of what all that is. And then there's a bunch of increases, 12 for lab fees, 10 for contract services, and 5 for sewer chemicals in the sewer budget. Water was level funded with last year. And with regard to lab fees, he said, we used to do more in-house sampling and testing. Our lab assistant found other employment, so all of our lab work is sent out, increasing that line item. The 10K for contract services is for consulting purposes. Our consultant was hired with DEP approval to act as our chief operator with proper licenses at the water treatment plant. The contract is up and we have sent out an RFP to continue services. We have to anticipate an increase as their contract expired after 3 years. And then for chemicals, He says, with a consent order from Mass DEP for high levels of phosphorus and an influx of infiltration of groundwater into our system, we had to increase our levels of chemical use to ensure compliance. So that generated that increase. I'll stop here. Any reactions, comments?
Maybe for future reference, not too soon, I hope, but in the cemetery, does it, do you have to pay for your own service, or is it, I mean, the contractor, I mean, you, more people are dying, but don't we charge them for the contractor, or does that just come with the package?
I love you, Bob.
Yeah.
So you have to buy a plot, but does Christine
No,
or
go ahead.
The plot
I
thickens.
didn't mean to interrupt you.
I don't have any, there's a cemetery fund. Is that considered a revolving fund or a perpetual fund?
It's perpetual care, yes. So when you buy your
You buy a plot.
you buy, I was gonna call it like your acre, you know, water view, you can, your fee covers perpetual care for that lot. That does not cover all of the work it takes for the burials, and that's what we've seen the increase on.
Okay. So if you buy your plot now, you could save some money later. Huh?
I do not want to have a rush. On the cemetery.
Okay, I'll go on mute. I just way too much.
I'm pretty sure this is some digging and it's cold out, okay? All right.
I'm just
We're
trying to
busy
say
tomorrow, Bob. I'm gonna call you.
Listen, now he's negotiating with you. You know, Bob said.
I'm not sure we all want to know what happens if we tell him he has to cut that 5K. Because he may hand you a shovel, Bob. Anyway, I can't. All right.
So all of the explanations are in these two panels for salaries and operations, and the last panel just puts everything together and shows you that overall, including water and sewer, the entire DPW request is up 1.5% over FY21. And you can see the individual line items there that we discussed, or divisions that we discussed. A couple of other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just one question on that. I was just looking at the sewer on the expense side, that 1,000,001. And I know you talked about all of what was in that number, but when did you, or do they have a schedule that supports that 1,000,001? In other words, when there's probably 15 or 20 line items within that 1,000,001 where they spend money, or I don't know, maybe 5 or 10.
That's circulated.
there
It
is,
it looks like that.
Oh, that's big. Oh, so that much. Okay, so they do have that detail, so you can peel the onion a lot when you look at that. Okay,
Yes, and we
which
can
you've already done.
that. Yep.
Okay.
But so the big change in sewer was the excuse me. I was looking at 20 versus 21.
Yeah, it was in May of 21.
Yeah. 21 to 22 is relatively, it's just
only
a
up
small hiccup. But
2.7.
back in 20, yes, there was a creation of some reserves, emergency reserves, infiltration and something else, 50 sewer infiltration inflow and sewer emergency reserve, both 50,000. They didn't exist in 2020. Also, the increase in salaries, as we talked about, mostly the full, I guess the DEP consultant or contractor, and the ad for the administrative side. But just looking at all the puts and takes on the other operating items, the one that stood out to me, that there was sewer, chemicals and supplies that were up about 40K. So that puts us up almost 230,000 of that 270, and that was just
right.
Spitballing all these items.
Yeah, no, I get it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm remembering the conversation from a couple of years ago when he had to hire the other person because we were in trouble with the environmental department, right?
DP, it was a mandate.
Yeah,
another
we
one.
didn't have a choice back then. So I would say that if buying extra chemicals helps us from getting more mandates, then perhaps that's a good thing.
Yes. So the other big, not takeaway, but the other thing that I did speak with him about, not at length, but I did want to get a handle on the capital budget. And there was some comment, I think, that along the way in one of our earlier meetings, that there might have been items that were brought, I guess, back or brought into 2022's budget from future years. And I asked him, were there any of his list of items from future years? And he said no, he was just making up for lost time from 20 and 21 in his capital budget. I was concerned that if there were things that were advanced into this budget from future years, that they may be susceptible to cutting. And he indicated no, that what he had were equipment replacements, especially on the heavily used trucks that are very high mileage. And he does recognize, Jeremy, that he owes you an inventory list of the active inventory, but he's concerned about keeping all the trucks in good operating order and on the road, given all their heavy use. The other big headline, and you know this from, or will know it from the Warrant article, is that there is the a Warrant article for the water treatment plant. And I think in November on the water and sewer site, or the DPW site, the consultant analysis was posted out there. It's very long, but there's a nice executive summary and a proposal, a budget estimate, probable costs for the project coming in at about $10 million. So that's what we have to look forward to on Warrant article.
Is that, so that's under the current warrant articles for this coming spring, the water
Yes.
treatment facility?
Yes. It is listed in that list. That's all I got. And
Alrighty.
I did this, we can have Mo come in if the group feels we need to have him come in. He's been sensational in answering questions, so that's up to the group. I'm not feeling that this is votable at this time, thinking that there are too many other variables.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to suggest, and we can talk about that for a minute now, is that I kind of feel like a lot of times we vote on these budgets individually, and then we have to change them in the end once all of the
Yeah.
pieces fall together. So I was kind of inclined that if we spend the next 3 weeks trying to get through all of the budgets, I even feel like at that point, we're still going to have a deficit issue that maybe we're not going to know the answers to.
Mhm.
But I'm kind of inclined for us to just kind of see how things go, and then make this kind of a working pushback as we go along, and then do a vote as a slate in the end, but as it gets closer to the warrant hearing,
Mhm.
if people are good with that. Because I just feel like people's numbers are changing, and then when push comes to shove, figuring out how we're going to close that gap, that way you don't not having to take minutes all the time of Newton of us approving budgets and then unapproving budgets and doing it again.
Given last year, and how all that went down and to the 11th hour or so, that it makes perfect sense to see how it all shakes out. And then with Christine's and Nick's guidance from the top of the house,
Yeah,
lines get managed thereafter.
yeah.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with that approach too.
Okay. All right. Then let's just plan to do that. And so, guys, just for talking about that for a hot second, I had sent you all just like a kind of a draft idea of how the next set of meetings would go. Like what I was really hoping is that over this week and the next 2, we could try to push through all the budgets, because then that puts us at what would be school vacation week. And, since everybody's going to the Caribbean and skiing and all these fun trips, that We might not be able to meet, just kidding. Except for we can't meet on Monday that week because of President's Day, and I think there's probably a selectmen's meeting on Tuesday. So um, I feel like that week we're either going to take off or we're going to have to meet on like Wednesday or Thursday. So we'll kind of cross that bridge as it gets closer. So let's just see how much we get through, because from a timing perspective, if we spend today and the next 2 weeks on budgets, if we take 1 week off, that gives us 3 whole weeks to do all the warrant articles before the warrant hearing. And I'm confident that we could make that work if we need to. So,
And I think, you know, Nick and I can also split up on a Tuesday, and one of us can
Okay.
cover the selectmen and one can cover you. So that's fine too if you have to meet on that Tuesday.
all right. Well, let's see how we can push through over the next couple weeks and then figure that out. So Jeremy, do you want to talk quick about the ones you had sent around, and then Christine and Nick can tell us what got added,
Sure.
what got killed?
So for the Energy Committee, and they originally they were thinking of having 3 warrant articles. They've scaled back to 2 from my latest understanding. One of them is this, well, there's 2 that were brought forward last year, one of which was the net zero emissions resolution was pulled voluntarily, and then going into the summer, they were both pulled. So they're proposing to come back with the net zero emission resolution and the community choice energy aggregation warrant article. The community choice aggregation energy aggregation article has the same wording as this committee approved last March, I believe. And that's coming forward, and they're still working on the other warrant article for their climate goals or the net zero. I believe their wording is still being discussed. So anyway, the crux of it is the community choice aggregation is the same as last year, and they are actively pursuing the environmental goals. It may be desirable to have them, the committee, come in and present on the climate goals so that they can make their case, knowing that there may be some active discussion of that. I don't believe they've actually gone to the selectmen for their endorsement as of yet.
Not yet.
They have been actively working on a PR sort of campaign and meetings in the lead up to town meeting. So I think my suggestion would be to, at a future meeting, invite them in to discuss their climate action goal. And at some point, the warrant committee may want to reaffirm their vote that was positive last time for the aggregation warrant article.
Yeah, we're probably gonna have to revote everything just for kicks.
Yep.
All right, that's good.
So if there's space at the next meeting, I could try to have them come in if they're ready.
So, I mean, right now, I think we probably do have space. I mean, I think we're gonna do police and fire next week. Do you think that's still gonna happen, Bob? I know you haven't met with,
I'm going to
Please,
meet
yeah.
with the police chief on Wednesday, but tentatively, I talked to, when I met with the fire chief, I suggested to him that we would try to do something on that Monday.
Okay.
So I can
So, I
confirm
mean,
that on Wednesday.
yeah, so why don't you just confirm, and then Jeremy, if you want to check to see if they want to do that, we could do both of those next week. That's fine. Okay. Christine, do you want to talk about the article changes that you have?
Yeah, there's just a few that I've added. I think since you saw this, although I think you got a new version of it today, but just to highlight the Main Street Historic District. The Historic District is going to bring that back in. So I've added that to the list. And the Medfield Food Cupboard has asked to hold space for a warrant article. They are seeking a lease of town property to move the Medfield Food Cupboard. So I've added those 2 on there. So you should have.
Was the historic one on the list last year?
I have to go back. I don't know if it was on last year, if it was on the year before.
Did anybody work on that before that wants that one? again?
I think I might have done that. I can take that one.
Yeah, Christine, that might have been 2 years ago.
Yeah, I think it was too, because they voted on it and they
Yeah,
approved it to
and then
rezone.
They withdrew it at the end.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I can take that one.
All right. Anybody want to do the food cupboard? There's a tour coming up.
I'll take it.
You want to take the food
Okay.
cupboard? Okay. Ed's got the food cupboard then.
All right, then I'll send you the email for the tour on Wednesday.
All right. I've been there. I've helped out.
You might not need the
Up
tour.
until COVID, I was helping out.
Okay, awesome.
On the topic of warrant articles, Christine or Nick, could you give me or Sharon a refresher as to the water treatment plant bond authorization? How will all that go down, so to speak? Should, we're talking about having department heads come in. Would Mo come in to talk about or review the highlights of that particular study and the
Yeah, I think Mo and the Water and Sewer Board should come in and talk about that.
all right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
From anybody's initial discussions, does anybody else have any grand thoughts of other people they want to bring in? Or do you think, like Amanda, do you think like Roberta and the library people want to come in, or do you think that they're okay with you just talking through it?
I can connect with Roberta again. I feel like she might want to come in. Pam was fine, like attending. She wanted to attend, and we were kind of like, "Do you want to present?" And she said she'd be more than willing to support me. But I was, so I was actually going to propose. I'm sure I could talk to her about possibly coming in next week or the following week. Just let me know what you think will work schedule wise.
Well, I know on the 8th, the schools are coming in, but they don't want to start until 7:45. So we have the first 45 minutes of that meeting
Okay.
open. So if you want to see if your people want to come in
I'll
before
see if I can
then,
get Roberta and Pam, and then I'm talking to Kevin this week, and I'm sure he'll want to present as well. I think he normally does present.
yeah, I think he normally does too. Just given how, given the fact that we haven't even been talking for an hour, I feel like 45 minutes would probably be fine if they each took 15,
Perfect.
yeah, every 3, yeah, I think we would be fine.
Okay.
And then the schools can start after that,
Okay.
if
Excellent.
that works.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
that's great. I'll get in touch and let you know if there's any issue.
Okay. All right. That sounds good.
Sharon, in last year, there were a number of departments that went into their funds. I'm trying to think of the term that it's the proper term, but
They're
Revolving.
revolving funds.
They're revolvers.
Revolving funds.
right, revolving funds. And they were used last year. Are those, are they being treated consistently, or is that being treated like a one-off?
So I can tell you that this year we are not taking the money from the Council on Aging to offset the respite care program. It hasn't operated in a year. So we're not going to take that money to offset the program.
Like, I think this situation through COVID is a lot of what was providing income into people's revolvers.
Yeah.
That income doesn't exist in those revolvers this year, so it's a little different.
Well, I know, I remember that Mike saying last year he had to dip into the revolvers much more than in prior years in order to make his budget work.
Yeah.
And so, and I know one of the items that you said, and what we're supposed to bring to the table when reviewing an area is what is their revolving balances.
Mhm.
So that's something, actually, I'm trying to meet with Mike tomorrow morning just to talk to him in general about what we need and to look at, to see if he could work with me on a schedule for revolvers. Because I think for the schools, they need to, that's what they have to dip in. They rely on that income to allocate payroll and other expenses to the revolvers. And if they don't have sufficient money in there, then they're in trouble. So we gotta have that discussion.
Well,
Yeah.
that's kind of the nature of my question. I mean, it refers back a bit to Christine, your discussion on budget cuts, because when these conversations on revolvers come up in some areas, it's like the third rail, although that's
It's a,
not for discussion. That's our kiddie fund. And, I think we tried to, I guess we tried to break that a bit last year. And I think it's important that we have that in the discussion, so that if and when we come to a deficit situation, it's one of the areas that needs to be pursued,
Yeah.
in my judgment.
yeah. And when you're looking at revolvers, you can look at a general ledger balance and say, okay, you have 150,000 in this revolver, but I've always found that you have to look back and you have to look forward on revolvers. You can never look at them point in time, because you can see, if you look at them over the course of a couple of years going back and a couple of years going forward, you can see how that person is managing that account and why they need what they have in a particular balance at a particular time. So you just can't look at a balance and understand that. But you're right, Bob. It's like the third rail when you're talking to them, and and we're an advisory board. I mean, it's up to them to manage the revolver, but I think we need to, at least I feel as though I need to understand that a little bit on the school side, since they have so many. So I'm going to try to begin that discussion tomorrow, and we'll see where we get.
I have faith that if anybody can know and understand it, you can. I have faith.
It is a third rail. You have to really, because I had this discussion with the Warrant committee in Mansfield when I did this year after year, and you had to have a person that you could trust, and not everybody, their balances weren't put out into the public or anything, but I trusted the person with whom I was talking, that they were an advisory board and we could talk about things and could agree to disagree on some areas, but at least we understood each other, and there was a comfort on the part of that Warrant committee person to basically sign off on the school budget. So and I think we have to reach that with the schools ourselves.
Sounds good.
So we'll see.
Okay. Does anybody have anything? We've actually gone to the bottom of our agenda. Does anybody else have anything for tonight?
No, we should have a lot more information once we get our cherry sheets Wednesday. So as soon as we get them, we'll
Okay.
send them out to you.
All right.
Hopefully some good news.
Okay, that's good. And then, and then hopefully even Ed, maybe there'll be some more clarity on what schools will be getting for CARES. And I can shoot them a quick note too. Like if we have any more clarity on that, that would be a good part of our discussion. I think on the 8th would be not only to talk about this budget, but maybe get an update on where we're at this year and if they know anything about the CARES stuff. Hopefully 2 more weeks will give a little bit more clarity in that.
And
try to
I
have some
asked this today, and then maybe for a future meeting, certainly not now, but kind of a summary of the takebacks on from last year that contributed to the free cash position. What
I think Christine's going to put that together, as long as we all promise to realize that she had frozen everybody's budgets and that they might have wanted to spend them, but she didn't let them.
I don't know what
But-
did you hear that
Of
today?
course,
17
Christine.
times?
Of course. We're all you. Come
See,
on.
I'm just proving that I listened this afternoon.
We're very understanding. You know that. Come on. We're all together here.
My new rule is say it 6 times and hope you listen for the 4th.
I listened.
I know.
Which reminds me that I think next week we're going to try to talk about reserved fund too, right? Or the financial policy stuff, we're gonna put that on the agenda for
Yeah,
next week.
yeah, and that's the thing I thought Nick and I just briefly talked today, but just to get a sense of where that cash position is relative to the policy, it'd be great.
Yeah, we'll do that next week. So he was finishing that up. So,
Sharon,
Christine, I see a chat question. Have all the
Yeah, I was just gonna note that.
Oh, sorry.
posted
Oh.
online.
I'm not paying attention.
That's right.
Have all the department budgets been posted online, including schools by chance? I know the town does a great job with that. So the town budgets are within the, they're under the
But they're-
meeting packet for the
Meeting-
warrant committee.
right. Is the school one in our meeting packet from last week? Or not yet because they're presenting it to
Yep,
the school
they haven't
committee
posted
this
yet.
week?
That's right,
Yeah,
Thursday.
right.
Yeah. Yep.
So this is again going to be an issue with how we define things when we say the town ones are there. There is one missing because it's, because it's the town and the schools instead of the town.
The
feel like
selectmen's
I'm-
budgets have been posted, but they're under the warrant committee meeting packets. We'll separate them out and list them out for everybody, but right now they're under the meeting packet.
Right. And our meeting packet from last week.
Correct.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, I think there's another.
And Sharon, you mentioned, you had asked me a question about the Dale Street School meeting.
Oh, yes, I
At
noticed.
least to have
yeah.
people aware of it.
Yes. Yeah, you want to talk about that? Well, because I just asked Bob, they haven't taken me off of the email distribution list, so I still see all the Dale Street stuff, and I have a little folder I drag them into because Bob is doing that now. But one
That's to
caught my
keep me honest, so you can
That's
make,
right.
check in on me and make sure I'm doing my job.
Yeah, one caught my eye that had said that I think it's next Thursday. There's a joint meeting between the school committee, the selectmen, and the Dale Street meeting. And so my question to Bob was, did we all care enough to attend that, or was that not something we all needed to?
Well, I mean, my opinion is that, it's an open meeting, so I'm not sure if you want to have the formal warrant committee there as participants, but I think if you're interested in listening in, it'll give you a good status as to where things are at the moment in that process.
Is it also a decision point meeting?
I don't think so. Christine probably knows better, but I think it's the most informative in just sharing the information, isn't it?
Yes, and I'm just confirming with Mike, I don't think we have finalized that date. I know that date was thrown out last time that we were looking for a joint meeting, but I'm just making a note to
Okay.
myself. I haven't circled back with Mike Quinlan to finalize that, so let me get back to you once that's been.
It was in an email blast.
I might not have read it yet. I had my budget meetings today. So I'll let you know.
Okay.
And then we have our meeting on the 1st.
I was gonna say, yeah, we're gonna meet before then anyway again.
Right,
So-
but on the 1st, there's also a meeting of the Wheelock School of the survey that was conducted for traffic survey, and it's open to everyone, to the town, but it's specifically continuing to solicit input from. Actually, as I'm talking, I'm thinking about something. It's for the traffic survey and some of the
Oh, right.
feedback.
Yeah.
And one of the participants is going to be the police chief. So the February 1st might not work for her
Okay.
because she's going to be there. And I think Mo is also going to be participating, in terms of at least taking questions and input. So.
Amanda,
Might
do
be-
you think that any of your people would be ready for the 1st then instead, or no? If he ends up having an issue.
I can do the fire, but I think the police will have to wait. Because she has that February 1st, and that's when it was moved to.
Sharon, I can see if planning and zoning can be ready on
Okay.
the 1st, and then maybe inspections. And I'm
Okay.
talking to Amy Colleran tomorrow, so I'll see if she can be ready on the
Okay.
first two.
And I do think we can get library. I mean, I'll confirm with Pam, but tell me if you want me to try to get library.
Well, why don't you guys just see who is an option, and then Bob can confirm, and we can just,
Okay.
you know, and then we'll just get a list together for next week. So that I think I need to, now that we're meeting on Mondays, we have to post the agenda on Thursday, right, Nick?
Yeah.
So if we can get an idea of who's going to come by Thursday, then that way we can list in the agenda who we think we're going to talk about the most for people's.
Well, let me lock in the fire chief on
Yeah, that's fine.
that, on the first, and then I'll talk about the police chief on the 8th.
And then when you guys are talking to people, just see if they have specific time constraints or anything like that within the
Mhm.
7 to 9 time frame, and then we can just build around that. So they don't have to feel like they have to sit here for the whole time. Even though we know how much fun it is.
So I've confirmed that meeting is on the 3rd. I'm sorry, what threw me off was that I had not booked them for the selectmen's meeting on the 2nd. So it's actually on a Wednesday to meet
Are
with
you
this.
going to get in trouble for that later?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
All good.
just making sure.
Yep, nope, we're good.
Okay.
I might get in trouble at home because that's 3 nights in a row out, but here I'm good.
Okay.
The meeting on the 3rd specifically is to explain the model school program, because whilst there's a design build in place right now, one of the options is to receive a model school proposal that's from the MSBA. And at one of the meetings, the selectmen had requested that be included. And so it's going to be discussed on the 3rd. That's the main topic on that date. So it's not a decision. It's to go over what the MSBA has come back with on model schools that might fit.
I was gonna say, is the model, just to clarify that, are the model schools the ones where they have like a set of 12 and you pick one out of a hat and this is your school? So you
Well,
don't
yeah,
have to,
exactly. So I think
basically.
what came back so the MSBA had their preliminary review, and in that review, there was a request by the town building
Mhm.
group to explore the model school option. And the
Gotcha.
MSBA came back with a number of towns that had at least schools that might fit into this profile.
Gotcha.
And so that's being reviewed now, and that'll be discussed on the 3rd.
Gotcha. Okay. Sounds like a meeting with popcorn and chocolate. All right, does anybody have anything else? If not, well, we can
Motion to
motion to
adjourn.
adjourn and call it a night, because the next two might actually go till 9, sounds like. All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, Bob,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Newton,
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Christine,
Aye.
Amanda,
Aye.
and me. I'm an I. So just let me know what you guys think you have for people and times